Did you know that eating before swimming doesn't give you cramps? That was just a superstition your mom told you. You know what? That sounds like me to throw a your mom joke in there. Yeah, I don't know if this is one of these moments where I'd be like, look, mom, are you proud of me? I'm in a video game. Yeah, I don't know if I really show this to my mom. But in all seriousness, my Fursona, Maverick the Wolf Dragon, the one that everyone seems to love for some reason, is in a video game, specifically a furry video game about inflation. Yeah, I'm not really setting a good standard for myself right now, are I? And I forgot to talk about it 2 years ago, so we're talking about it now today. Isn't ADHD great? And you're probably wondering, Beta, how the hell do you forget something like that? And you know what? You're absolutely right. I shouldn't forget something like that because that sounds really cool. Having your very own character, your Fursona, someone that defines you and what you do in a video game, an interactable character in a video game. How do you forget about that? Well, here's the thing, I didn't. I remember there was some announcement about the next build of the game happening, and I put it on my to-do list of like, okay, I'll go over and check it out later. And then at some point I was like, oh, I'll do this today. Let me take this off the to-do list. And then 2 years go by. And here we are now, finally talking about it. So for those that didn't know, a few years ago, I ended up going through this game called Tribal Hunter, which is a furry inflation game. Pretty much the whole mechanic of the game is you inflate or deflate, you attack enemies, you do more damage when you're more inflated or bigger. In some sense, one of the characters is literally a furry character. The whole game has like furry vibes to it. They're a very furry, eccentric, anthropomorphic animal characters. I don't want to say it's a furry game, but I call it a furry game. You know, if you put the whole inflation aspect to the side, it's actually a really well put together platformer. And I personally enjoyed it when I played through it. In fact, I played through the whole game on Twitch a good few years ago. I think in like late 2020 going into 2021. It was back when the game had just first released. They weren't done with their like final build, but they had released the game on Steam. And my playthrough was relatively popular. A lot of people really enjoyed it. So much so that a couple of the devs actually ended up hopping into my stream, giving me some tips, talking to me about like the game, the development behind it, and it was really cool to see overall. And once I finished my playthrough, I was notified by one of the developers about how they were selling slots for NPCs in the game. You know how you'll have like in a lot of video games where if you support the Kickstarter for a certain amount or you support the game monetarily in some way, shape, or form, they'll either like feature you in like the end credits of saying thank you to these supporters, or they could do something very neat where they add your character into the game. And that's exactly what the team behind Tribal Hunter wanted to do for the game. There's like a little NPC area in the starting free area of the game where you can interact with different characters, and the NPCs are based on the supporters in the game. But that whole area featured all sorts of different NPC characters, whether they were people's personas or just their characters, based on if they supported the game. And I saw this tweet about it where they were selling these slots to be added in, and I thought, oh, that would be pretty cool. So I ended up filling, I think, one of their forms out, and then they contacted me saying, hey, we chose your thing, we'd love to feature your character in the game. And so I gave them all the details, sent the payment, and forgot about it. That's the weird thing about me. Whenever I pick up a new game, I either don't really like it at all, or I become so obsessed and hooked on it that for like the next month and a half, I do nothing but play that game until I burn myself out on it and don't want to touch it again. I don't know what that says about me based on my mental state or psyche, and I don't really want to know, but it happens all the time, whether it's Destiny 2, Dead by Daylight, Balatro for some reason, or this game, Tribal Hunter. I had that whole moment where I played through the game pretty much like every day on Twitch until I beat it, and it was so well received, I loved it, and then once I finished the game, it's like, okay, I don't want to touch this again. Not because I didn't like it, but just because I burned myself out of it. Which honestly, you know, when you play the game through and beat it, there's only so much you can do too, so you just kind of move on to the next game once you finish it. And so I guess I mentally checked out of the game and entirely forgot that I was going to be in the next build after I sent in the details for my character, wanted to be an NPC, sent the payment, I think it was like $100 or something in order to be featured in the game. And again, like I said, I don't remember the exact process for what happened with it. All I know is that I went to their tweet, I filled out the form that they had, and then I was contacted later about being potentially featured in the game. And on this form, you could pretty much choose which in the game you're at the Sweet Rotisserie restaurant, so whatever food you have in front of you was what you were going to be eating. The food choice I ended up going for was a burger because I fucking love love cheeseburgers. I mean, as you can probably tell. And let me just say, when I cook burgers, they are absolutely on point. I do not fuck around with that. It is going to be juicy and delicious every single time. And for the character, I chose Maverick, the white and black monochromatic wolf dragon that wears a safety vest. And of course, I made sure for them to include the life jacket. You know, furry inflation, life jacket inflation. I guess it's the same thing to some extent, but not really. You know, if people were going to forget the whole monochromatic wolf dragon, they were definitely not going to forget the life jacket, and so I wanted that to be the staple for what was added in. And I believe this was around 2021 or so, going into 2022, where this whole selling of slots ended up happening. And they told me once they were finished adding in the NPCs and all that, he would be in the next build of the game, which I did end up throwing on notifications so that I knew when the final build of the game would be, so I could check it out when the time came. And like I said, I forgore. And I'm glad that I checked this out on stream too, because I found some very interesting things about it. Specifically that I wasn't the only character that I was going to recognize in the game. Is that Pyrocynical? No fucking way. No, it is. Is that Ina? Or Inu? I can't remember who they are. They're like a furry artist. I've commissioned them before. No fucking way. That's what does he say? This has got to be a Pyrocynical quote. I gotta ask the locals how they feel about becoming a tax haven. That way, when I come on vacation here, I'd be killing 2 birds with 1 stone. What am I doing here? Just because I upload once a month doesn't mean that is 100% Pyrocynical. He wasn't in here last time I checked. Why is he in the furry inflation? Actually, yeah, that makes sense why he's in the furry inflation game. Oh yeah, and on the forum, they also asked what you wanted for the dialogue to be for your character. And I wanted to go for something kind of clever, some little food for thought, but also something rather niche. Did you know that eating before swimming doesn't give you cramps? That was just a superstition your mom told you. You know what? That sounds like me to throw a your mom joke in there. Can you inflate as big as my life jacket? My life jacket inflates when wet to keep my head above water. It can be a pain to deflate though. Safety first. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. So when I went into this on stream, I didn't realize many different things about the game. One, that I hadn't played it since like 2021 to 2022. And the second thing, that I had over 40 hours dunked into the game. It wasn't just to the point where I just played it on stream a lot. I grinded the fuck out of it, so I had like all the maximum stats going into the next stream. Like when I would finish a stream, I would immediately unpause and go to just like beating up enemies to get XP, to get money, so that I was maxed out for the next part of the game. So that explains the nearly 50 hours of game time on my one specific save. But after cycling through the different NPCs, I finally saw my character sitting alongside the, I believe it was Dragoneer, the guy behind Fur Affinity, I think. You know, the purple dragon with the sort of Digimon-esque marks. I think there's supposed to be a Guilmon or something. I don't necessarily know, but I do remember they asked me like, hey, do you want to be sitting alongside this character or this character? I'm like, you choose, whatever you want. And then I ended up sitting alongside Dragoneer in the game. And my dialogue in it is very interesting. I'm just chilling there in a life jacket, eating a cheeseburger. What more could you want in life? Though to be fair, if you were to ask me what more I would potentially want, maybe being a playable character in the game, maybe floating in the water in the background, I don't really know. But honestly, it was very surreal to see one of my characters in a video game. It's one of those things that a lot of people who are huge gamers want to see, whether it's their character, whether it's voice acting from them in the game, whether it's some mentioning of them, or something very special and unique for them that is part of the game. A lot of people want it, even if they don't really talk about it or ask it, which is when I was asked on stream, like, hey, Beta, what are your thoughts on being in a video game? How does it feel seeing your character in a game? And truth be told, it's not really something I've thought about before. Like, if I were to be in some video game, I never really gave a thought of like specifics, what kind of game I'd want, you know, features, if I'd want to be an interactable character or a playable character, whether I would want it to be one of my Fursonas or just me. I wasn't really sure. It's not something that I had asked myself before. But now that I'm thinking about it with like the specifics here, the type of game, my character in a life jacket being in the game, it is probably the most fitting thing ever. And I don't think I'd want it any other way. And you know, truth be told, I would love to get into voice acting for video games. I'd love to voice act some characters. In fact, I'm kind of doing so right now with a visual novel, which that'll be a separate video at some point, just saying. But I'd love to get into like voice acting or something like that. But honestly, it's just really surreal and makes me really happy to see a character in a game that some people who might be playing Tribal Hunter at some point in the future might go to that restaurant area and then see a character they recognize and then having that character be me. Like, honestly, I'm glad that this is a thing. I think the best part about it is it's not like a main role character. It's not like someone that you have to interact with in the game either. He's there, but entirely optional, and is like one of those, I guess, an Easter egg, but not really an Easter egg that you can go and interact with or see in the game, which I think is really cool. I think that's probably the best case for what I want as being in some video game. And with it being in an inflation furry game, I think it's fitting. But even outside of that, just looking at it as a pretty decent 2D platforming game, I'm just glad I'm in something like that. Because like I said, put all the inflation and whatnot to the side and, you know, just rely on like the game mechanics and the platforming as is, it's a pretty good game. It is pretty good all in all. It's not the most standout thing in the world. It's not going to revolutionize the gaming industry, but it's cool. It is cool to see. As a simple indie platforming game, I'm really glad and thankful that I got to be a part of it. Granted, I paid for that to happen and I filled out a form, but honestly, it's just neat to see. It's different from seeing your character modded into a game, which I've seen plenty of times, starting with like Left 4 Dead 2. I think one of my like VR chat models was very moddable to the point where I could play as myself in Left 4 Dead 2, which was kind of neat and all. But it's very, very different from seeing your character just as a standalone character in the game that fits the style of everything else around it. Even if it's just a role of being an interactable, optional NPC, I'm honestly very thankful and very appreciative that I got to be a part of it. And also I feel kind of bad that it took me 2 years to talk about it, or at least recognize that it happened, because again, truth be told, I hadn't seen myself in the game till that point on stream. And the whole thing with adding the character in the game, I swear it happened in like late 2021 going into 2022. It is crazy that I completely forgot about it, and it took 2 years for me to do it. But here we are, and as such, I wanted to share it with you all today. But either way, that's pretty much it for this video. I guess if you want a question of the day in the comments, let me know how you'd want to be featured in a video game. It's not really something that anyone really asks one another, and it kind of threw me off when I was asked that in my stream. I didn't really have a proper answer for it. So if you'd want to be featured in a video game, how would you want it to be? What kind of game? What role? And why? If you want to share a little bit more about yourself or your character, whether it be, you know, your Fursona featured in a game, your own person being featured in a game, or being a voice actor or contributing to the game in some way, shape, or form. That's the question of the day. Answer that in the comments if you'd like. But yeah, it was just a very neat thing to experience. I don't know if I'll ever be featured in a game again, but I'm just glad that it got to happen. But either way, I've wanted to share this fun little thing with you today. And the next time we share something like this, it'll probably be something around the lines of voice acting, because I've had experience with that recently. Haven't really talked about that, but I think it would be neat to share. So be on the lookout for a video like that in the future. And if you want to check out the game, feel free to do so. Just obvious fair warning with it. I'd say that it's an 18+ sort of game. It has furry inflation in it, so yeah, fair warning, understand that going into it. But also let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. But either way, that's about going to do it for me. Hope you guys have a good one. Take care, life stay jacket, and I'll see you all in the next one.